Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we are going to be doing a deep dive on DAX user-defined functions, which is something that came out in the 2025 version in preview, obviously, and if you want to experiment with them, you can go to File, Options, and Settings, Options, Preview Features, check the DAX user-defined functions, and then restart your Power BI or just create a new blank Power BI file, whatever you want to do. And this is all the documentation we have on these. So it's a little bit of a trial and error with this. But before we really dig into this, I want to clear up two things. One is I apologize if I spammed a bunch of people with notifications on the 15th with a bunch of my videos going live. What happened there is that I actually have members only content on my channel, and it's scheduled out all the way through like November 20th, and it's every 5 days. And so already have videos made all the way out through November 20th. But what I had noticed is that I had made a mistake on publishing some of those because I'm supposed to publish them members only to public and then pick a specific day. Well, on some of them I had chosen from private to public, right, on a specific day, and it should have been members. So I fixed it. So in YouTube I checked the box for members to public, but what happened was it reset my date to the very next day. And so I ended up having a bunch of videos go live on the 15th, which I didn't want. So I took them back, private or members only, and scheduled them out appropriately. So anyway, apologize if anybody got spam notified about that. It should not happen again, I hope. Oh, I'll really pay attention. Now the other thing is, if I wasn't clear in the part 2 of the September 2025 release, let me be very clear. That whole enhanced time intelligence stuff, it's the last time I will ever cover it because it's worthless. Okay. Why Microsoft decides to spend time on stupid things like that when they've ignored it for over a decade, right? And the community has already created a perfectly fine solution that is light years more advanced than what the TI functions give you. Right, I don't understand why Microsoft decided like, oh, we need or got all up on who was even asking for that, right? I mean, we already have solutions for fiscal calendars. We've had them for over a decade, right? Because Microsoft refused, well, one came up with crap design for TI functions to begin with, right? Where they didn't support fiscal years and they didn't support weeks, and they refused to fix it for over 10 years. And now they come out with a fix, and it's just like too little, too late. So you won't hear me covering those anytime soon. And the right way to do fiscal calendars is offsets. Okay, just so we're all clear about it. All right, let's take a look at this user-defined function because it's really the only thing that's worth looking at in the September release. So I've been doing a lot of stuff with it. So here, let's bring up this. Okay, now a lot of this stuff is really kind of janky, right? You can see the functions right over here in here, but you can't really do anything with them other than I guess you can delete them and rename them. Um, and then, but you have to create them kind of here, or I guess you could create them here. And this is the only place that you can actually go and script to and then blah, and then create these things. And we're going to be doing some more stuff with this stuff I haven't tested yet. So we'll learn about it, live, both of us. So anyway, so I've got a bunch of functions defined, but let's take a look at this one. So I've got this defined, so it's some function, and then you can see I have some comments here, and then the parameter, and then this thing right here is, so you get any ref, any val, Boolean, date time, decimal, double, expression, int64, right? I mean, most of these we know what these are, right? Table, so that's cool. You can pass tables in. Like the ones that are interesting to me was expression. I was glad to see table, right? Because that means I can pass tables in, and I'll show you examples of that. You can also get tables back out of functions, which I've complained about that for years. I don't know why Microsoft didn't and that's really, honestly, that's like the number one interesting thing to me for user-defined functions. So the only real valuable thing necessary, I think, is that you can have functions that hold tables and store your tables for you, so that you have reusability around filtering tables and doing other things with tables. Although, it'd be so much easier if they just would remove the restriction of measures returning scalars and have measures that you could return tables, and that would be like 10 billion% better. But we'll call it a win that we can at least return tables from DAX and have tables that are kind of pre-calculated essentially, that and pre-filtered and that sort of thing, that we can use in multiple measures. So take it as a win. Then we have this val and variant, right? So some of these, I mean, and we'll get into this, but like val, I can't understand the difference between val, and any reference right now. It seems like with all of them, they just you can just shove a table there or whatever the heck. They don't, it doesn't really matter. You can just like, it can be a string, can be a number, it can be a table. It doesn't really care. So I don't know what the difference is between them necessarily, but we'll get into all that. So yeah, so let's change this. Let's go with numeric here. So I haven't changed anything. So that is the definition. So now what I can do is, I don't think I have, what I call that thing? Sum function. All right, so let's go ahead. We can create a measure here. So sum function equals sum function, and then we had passed it a number, right? So pass the number 12. Now, when you're seeing this, like, so when you do this, right, you get some type ahead. You get some of the little pop-up here. It's kind of hokey, quite honestly, like, because you can have, like, it shows the parameter and then it's numeric, right? It'll show any comments, right? So either you need to put comments in to tell the user what the hell they're supposed to be putting into this thing, or I guess you could just make sure you name your parameters something that is obvious to the end user, that, hey, this is what this is for, right? But you'll notice, like, my other comments down below that don't come through on this. So anyway, so I can do, let's do 12 and then hit enter, and then we can do a card visual and then some function, and there's our 12, right? Because that's how this is defined. It just returns it. Now, so this is the basic syntax. You use define, then the keyword function, what your function name is, equals, and then paren. You put in your parameters, okay? You end the paren, you do the equals, greater than sign, and then you have your DAX expression that actually does the work. And we're going to be creating these. These are pretty basic. In fact, all the ones that I've seen from anybody are pretty basic, but towards the end of this, we're going to do a really complicated one. We're going to do trim mean as try to get that one as a user-defined function. And if you don't know anything about trim mean is a beast. So anyway, so now if you want to have multiple parameters, you can do that. Multiple things that you want. So param2, and then numeric. And so then I can do something like param2 plus param1 plus param2, whatever. And so now I can update this with my model. Now this again is pretty, it just overwrites stuff and it just creates stuff, even whether this is valid or not, right? Whether this is valid or not in terms of the DAX that's here, it doesn't care. It'll just create it. So it's kind of not a lot of safeguards around this. So it's like, this comes up all the time. Doesn't matter if you're overwriting or creating a new function, this comes up and you update your model. So now that model definition has been should be updated. I don't know why it immediately, interesting. This usually goes gray. Huh, interesting. All right. So maybe we have this thing updated, maybe not. Oh yeah, so it immediately breaks, right? So this is some of the fun with user-defined functions. You change the definition, anything that's using them breaks immediately. So let's say we're gonna do 12 and 8. And now if you notice, well, screwed it up. So here we go. So it does the comments, right? And then has your parameter, and then it has the additional comments and then the other parameter. So kind of hokey, but that's sort of how it works. So I can do 12 and I can do 8, and then I'll hit enter there, and there we go. Some function returns 20. All right, so there you have it. I got this one convert to epoch, whatever. Now this is that one's, that's the one that came from SQL BI, pretty standard. Now this one is a filter. This one actually returns a table. So filter. So where's my definition of this? So filter table. So filter table, I give it a number and it does filter. It's hard coded table. I could pass that in, right? So column. So in fact, let's go ahead and update this to show that. Go back like this. Working with these things is really kind of a mess and kind of not easy. Like I don't know why it does that, but whatever. Screws up all the tabbing. Okay, the number to filter, and then what I'll do is I will say, well, let's see here. This is it. This is it. So let's see. So table. So then I could replace this. Oh, I need the comma there. And so now I can replace this with table. Now, the interesting thing is I don't know. So it doesn't know whether the column that, since I'm referencing a table being passed, it has no idea if column is actually in that, column one is actually in that table or not. And I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some. I should have tested this before, but I don't know. I don't know how to make a. Is there a way that you can do a column reference in here? I don't think there is, which I think kind of makes this not as useful as what it could be. All right, so then we want to update our model. So now my things are broken. Yep, it's broken because filter table only passed in one parameter. So I can do table and then that, enter. And so I'm doing a 2 CSV of what's coming back. So it's 1 and 2. If I switch this to 2, so 1 and 3 come back, right? So this filter table is actually turning. I'm passing in a table. I'm getting back out a table. So that's pretty cool that you can do that. That's probably the only real thing that's really useful about UDFs so far from what I've found, but there you go. Now this pass expression, remember we had mentioned this expression. So like I can go in and pass an expression 4 plus 4, and then 4, like I do 4 plus 6, right? So you can pass in expressions, but then initially I got excited about this, but it turns out it's really kind of limited. So this is pass expression. So all pass expression is pass expression. It's right here. So you just pass in an expression and then it just spits it back out, right? So it's sort of like having like an evaluate is with the way I looked at it. But it's not nearly as, so here, I'll just show you. Pass expression 2. So I'm passing in two numbers and then expression and then expression and then it pumps out the expression, right? So this would be really cool if I could do something like this. So, well, like what I tried to do initially on this was num1 plus num2, right? Because the thinking is that here's num1, here's num2, and I can add them together as the expression, except it doesn't work. It doesn't like the fact that that's num1 and num2, and I tried a bunch of different ways to get around it, but it doesn't seem to work at all, which is unfortunate because that would be super powerful if, right, num1, num2, if you could do it that way, if you could do stuff like that. But limitation number one, right? Everyone's, these MVPs that you've been talking about UDS for like a year, and about how great they're going to be, but then they're not that great. And probably they're going to be talking about it for the next 2 to 3 years until these things go GA. But like doing stuff like this would be really cool. And I tried wrapping this in an evaluate and doing all kinds of stuff like that, but can't do it. Which is unfortunate because then you could pass in numbers and then act on the fly, decide what you want to do with those numbers, whether you want to multiply them or subtract them or add them or what you want to do. It'd be really powerful if they could do this, but you can't. So not as powerful as you might think. All right, so here's filter table 2. So this one I'm passing in 2 tables. So the definition for this is filter table 2. Filter table 2, so pass in a table, pass another table. I'm going to count rows, the filter of the table where the year is in table 2, right? So highly specific, but you can do it. So count rows, so I can do hey, there you go. There's nothing in there's the 2024, but I can say, hey, I can say dates instead, hit enter, and there's 366 rows in 2024. And then if I can add in 2025, right, 731. So that's cool. But again, the column referencing, like how, because you can't, I just don't understand. I don't know how you would do that. So let's say that we could change the definition on this guy. So filter table, yeah, we'll use filter table. So instead of column one, so we'll say, because there is no column, there is no column, or can I, any value. So any reference, any reference. Let's try any reference. So column, any reference, and then we'll say column is not number. Oh boy, let's see if this works. So table number, this is filter table, all right? And I have to pass in a column. So update the model, it's gonna break, it's broken, filter table. So now, what was it? It was table and then year, then table, year. Table, not table year, what was it? Filter table. Now I forgot what I did. Table number. Okay, column one is what I want. That was column one, right? I got the other one on my brain. All right, let's do this. So table column one, but did say any reference, right? So filter table. Why is this? What doesn't like? Oh, we're just gonna enter and see. Failed to resolve name column. It is not a valid table, variable, or function name. Okay, so apparently any reference is it's not, right? Because this would be a reference to column one in table, but it doesn't like it. So it doesn't actually replace it down here. You would think that it was like, well, it's table and then it's the table column, but it doesn't work. So I don't think that that's going to work, unfortunately. So there's strike two on UDFs on, hey, this would be really cool if they could do this because this would solve major problems, I would think, but it can't. So that is unfortunate. This value, like this thing, like this is the value function. The definition for this is here, value function. It passes in a value, which it has a VAL type, and it just spits it back out. So this is kind of interesting. I don't know how useful it is, but this is doing a count rows value function of custom 445 table, right? I can do stuff like this. I can say 4, and it returns 4. I can say now, and it returns now, right? Can I do 4 plus 4? Yep, it does 8, right? So it's kind of interesting. I don't, yes, if you want to return variance, I suppose, I don't know. It doesn't seem to have any problems with the variance or the fact that this measure can return variance, because I guess, the function can return a variant. The measure only returns one value data type at a time, depending on what's passed back from the value function. So I guess maybe it makes it a little easier to mess around with variance, I suppose. Let's see this use function. So use function two. So basically what this does is, this one's kind of interesting. So you can refer to other functions within your function. So here I'm passing in a value. I'm adding that value to pass expression, which is my expression function, right? And I'm doing 10 plus 10. So this was an experiment. Can I use functions within other functions? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. So in this case, my use function, I passed in use function 2. So it's going to add 2 to 10 plus 10, right? I could add 10 to 10 plus 10 and get 30, right? Fun stuff. So that was interesting. That was a good experiment. So I'm glad that you can use functions within functions. Didn't know if you were going to be able to do that or not. Any rough table, so count rows. And again, this is just experimenting. I really can't find much of a difference between any ref, any val, and vow. I don't know what the differences are, and there's no documentation to tell us at the moment. So your guess is as good as mine on that one. All right, so now I have one more before we really start to bleed off into like territory I don't even know. Um, and that is I have another function here called fib. So fib. So here, let's take a look. So put in seed one, put in seed two, and then the Fibonacci series number that you want out of it. Now it's going to be two removed because you're putting in seed, 0 and 1. I didn't make it super complicated. I wanted to see if it's possible, right? So if num equals 0, it just takes the seed 1 and seed 2 and adds them together to give you the Fibonacci number, right? Otherwise, it calls itself, because functions can call their functions. So it calls itself with seed 2 and then seed 1 plus seed 2, so the next number in the Fibonacci series, and then num minus 1 passes it back into the Fibonacci series. It's recursion, people, right? Can UDF solve recursion, right? So let's go ahead and try it out. So Fibonacci equals fib, and we're going to seed it with 0 and 1, the first two numbers, and tell us we want the sixth number, which would actually be the eighth Fibonacci number, right? Hit enter. Nope. The answer is no. It even knows what we're trying to do. Damn you, right? Recursion using the fib user-defined function is not allowed. Why? Why in God's name is it not allowed? Right? This makes no sense to me. Like, why shouldn't you at least have the option, Microsoft, to be like, hey, allow user-defined functions to be recursive? Like, this would introducing recursion into DAX would be game changing. Game changing. Like user-defined functions, I don't know if they change some things a little bit, right? But this would be game changing if you could actually do recursion in DAX. That would change everything. So I don't know. Of the things that I've tried with user-defined functions, mostly disappointed. Quite honestly, I can't do column references, right? I can't do, even though it says any reference, I don't know how I can make that dynamic to say what column I want to filter on. If I'm doing a filtering, I don't see how that, haven't been able to figure out how to do it. So that's pretty disappointing. Can't do recursion, even though there's no earthly reason why they shouldn't be able to do recursion, right? And everything else is kind of fail city. Other than I can get tables back, and I can have a store, basically store a table, and I don't have to include that every time. But in terms of working with these things, they're such a pain to work with, and there's zero guardrails. It's really, I don't know how much this is going to change. And again, I go back to how can an enterprise use these things, right? So how could I create a central repository of these user-defined expressions? Because otherwise, I'm left with having to kind of backpack these things. Back up all my user-defined functions, put it in a file somewhere, and then paste it over, and do it again. So I started like trying to experiment with how can I do this. So what I did was I took this model and I published it up to the service. All right. And then what I did was I created this. No, I need A. I closed A. There we go. Here's A. This is B. So I did with A is, once it wants to load here. So I created an enter data query, table 2, right? And then I connected it through direct query to my published September 2025 model. And, to, in the hopes that my functions would come over. But fail city. Nope, the functions do not come over. And I can use the measures, but I cannot use, like, for example, I cannot use convert to epoch, whatever. I can't use that function. It doesn't exist. Even though it's in the model, in the service, it's published there, I can't use it if I'm connected, if I'm using a direct query connection to it or not, or anything like that. So another big disappointment in my opinion, and really a hindrance to being able to use these things, quite honestly. So yeah, there you go with that. Now I think I did B so that I could do something like this. So basically, it's just a copy of A, right? But now I can, let me see, I can go back here. Is this how I'm going to have to backpack my user-defined functions around, right? So I can copy this and then go to B and paste it in, right? And then apply. Is below the minimal compatibility needed for function any ref at Power BI mode. Do you want to upgrade and reapply a change? Yes, sure. That's really weird because it didn't have any problems with me. It's the same version of that I created the function in originally, but okay, at least I thought it was. So now I have my functions. Here they are, right? Apparently they don't conflict with the functions that are already created in the model I'm already connected to because those don't come along for the ride. And so now I can do convert now. And then I can put this. Yep, and there's the answer. Okay. Yip, yippee. That seems like an awful pain. So I think that's really going to limit like UDFs and what people are going to do with them. Because if they're constrained to a single report and you've got to kind of grab them and copy them over to the next report, they're really no better than measures from that perspective in terms of reusability, and in fact are worse than measures, because with measures, I can in fact use my measures from the analysis services that's published up in the service. I can use those measures, but I can't use the functions that were defined. So in terms of reusability, Microsoft's like, oh, reusability, like they're even worse. They're not even as reusable as measures, quite honestly. So, I don't know. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Let's go ahead and see if we can create. So this is chapter 14, and this is the trim mean measure. All right, so this is the trim mean measure. So what it takes as far as inputs is it takes a table and a value, right? Rank X and table, and then percents and then value. It takes a table, I guess you could say, a table and then this thing. So let's see if we can convert this into a user-defined function, because this is a monster, right? This is a very complex thing. So what we're going to need, and I haven't tried this yet, so bear with me on this. So what we need is we need this, right? So we need this, and we'll put this into our course teams, into our September. We're going to say modeling, new table. And let's call this something different, percents table. Just so we're forced to modify things. And then let's go back to here. We're going to need our TM table, which is, I think was originally just an enter data query. So we're going to copy the table and then switch back. And then we're going to do an enter data query. Nope, not that. Stop. Enter data. All right. I'm going to call this TM table. And we're going to load that. All right. So now let's see. We're going to need a new page here. That was okay. Let's see. What do we need next? We need the TM measure, actually, the trim mean measure. So let's go ahead and copy this. Oh, we want the whole. Okay, we got the whole thing. And then we're going to need to go here. Okay, let's see what we got here. We'll call this the TM function. And we're going to pass in a table. And let's say it's a column. And maybe we can say this is now. Now we already tried passing in the column, so maybe we'll have to pass in another table, which kind of makes this again table 1. And we'll call this one the TM table. And then we'll call this one the percent table. Table. Let's just try to get it working first. And then we'll go from there. We want that is out of there. So this. This again. Okay. Oh, let's see here. So this is going to have to change to our TM table. And this is going to have to change to our TM table. And this is going to have to change to our, and let's modify this slightly, max X, and we'll say our percent table value. Now, obviously there's things that are, it doesn't like, whatever, but all right. So define function TM, update model with changes. And we're going to apply it. Okay. All right. So then therefore, what we should be able to do is take our percent table, and we want a table, and we don't want it to sum. We want this. And then we will need a measure, which is going to be our TM measure. And it's just going to equal TM table and percents table. Oh, not table, TM table. And then percents table. And we enter there. And now we add that. Oh, it worked. So it actually worked. So let's see. Let's give ourselves like 6. Yeah, so anyway, so let's see. So this is chapter 14. This is trim mean. 1818. Yeah, okay, yep. These just go out a little further as far as the decimal places. But yeah, that worked. We just turned our our TM trim mean measure into a user-defined function. Now again, the flexibility of these user-defined functions is until I can find a way. If this really is a limitation, then it's really disappointing that if I'm not going to be able to, even with any ref, if I can't pass in a column reference. I don't know. It's we can try it. Let's go ahead and give it a try. PM column, say any ref, and then percent column, any ref. We already tried it this way, but we might as well give it the old college try. And again, TM, watch it fail. TM column. I know these aren't the only places, but percent column. So then what we'd need to do is we'd update this, update the model. It's going to break. Yep, we knew it was going to break. TM measure. TM table value. Percent table value. Oh, it worked. Why didn't that work before? Holy smokes. Okay, so that is good. If that actually works. So any ref did work that time. Why wasn't I must have done something wrong on the other one. I don't know. What was that other one that I did? Filter table? Like, why didn't that filter table work? Let's look at that real quick. So I feel like I didn't do anything different. No, not that. Filter table. Oh, Greg. Greg. Okay. The one score. So that so that does work. That's huge. Okay. That now I'm a little bit more upbeat about UDFs, right? That you can do that. Um, okay. All right. So okay, one thing that they passed is they can do table. You can pass tables in, get tables out. That's a good thing. You can pass column references in. That is also top notch. That's great. Now the other one with can't solve recursion. Boy, I wish they'd solve that because that would make them like incredibly powerful in my opinion. So yeah, so there we go. So there we got so we could also current group in theory. Ah boy, this is interesting. Ranks table. So it's still value probably because I don't need to change this because table underscore table is this. So it has rank and it's going to rank X that, but it's the TM table, which has the value column in it. So yeah, probably should convert these to be the reference. But then is that right? Is that correct? Because this is going to refer to the TM table, not is a reference to the TM table instead of a reference to the value column in this variable table. So is that going to break it? Auto changes. Unexpected error, function auto change reversal COTO. Okay, it didn't like that. I don't know what it didn't like, but it didn't like it, I guess. Did it change anything? So it's still working. Oh, it didn't. Oh, it does not like it. So what if I change it back? All right, so I changed it back. It's also referenced down here. So I changed it back. Oh, well, fine. I guess I'll just add a comment. Aha, update model. Okay, so it likes that. It does not like. That's interesting. I wonder if it's so maybe there's bugs to work out, or maybe it realizes that that reference in this context is not okay. Um, Interesting. So it almost need to have, boy, I don't know how I'd solve that in terms of to make it truly dynamic where this value column wouldn't have to be called value. It could be called something else. Yeah, that's gonna be tricky, I think, in terms of like probably won't be able to do that. Um, but I'll keep experimenting with it and find out. But yeah, I mean, so UDFs, I mean, are they game changing and stuff? I don't think so. I think they're just mildly interesting, honestly, because one, they're constrained to a single data model, a semantic model, right? So okay, let's do the pros and cons, right? They can return tables. You can pass tables in. Good. You can pass in column references, which is pretty cool. Um, where they fall down on is that it's not enterprise scale, right? I mean, the fact that I have to backpack these functions from one place to the next is, and there's no single source of truth that way. Then I think that's a huge ding against UDFs. Um, and then the fact that there's no good reason why they shouldn't be able to support recursion, and it looks like it's just Microsoft being like, nope, not allowed to do that. That's kind of garbage. I mean, that would be that if they'd supported recursion and if it had you could in enterprise capabilities where you didn't have to like back up and then copy these things from one semantic model to the next, that would, in my opinion, would make it game changing. The way that it is now, I say it's mildly interesting. And I don't know how many people will actually use them because of those core limitations. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but I see them as interesting, but not game changing, I guess you could say. So there you have it. That's my opinion on UDFs, at least in their current state, which I understand is preview, but you know, I don't want to wait 2 years to like tell you what I think about UDFs, right? So there you have it. That is all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.